Thank you for coming to today's Dharma service. I'd like to start my Dharma message. So I have a PowerPoint prepared. And so today I'd like to talk about a letter from Renyo. If you would please join me in Gobunsho, I'll share this letter with you. What is taught is the tradition of Shinran Shonin is that the entrusting heart is essential. For when we abandon various practices and take refuge in Amida Buddha with singleness of heart, our birth in the Pure Land is settled by the Buddha through the inconceivable vow power. The state we thus attain is described as, with awakening a single thought of entrusting, we join those who are in the stage of the truly settled. Recitation of the name of the Buddha, Namo Amida Butsu, thereafter, should be understood to be the Nembutsu as an expression of gratitude for the Tathagata's benevolence for settling our birth in the Pure Land. Humbly and respectfully. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namandav, Namandav, Namandav. The passage I just shared for today's Gosandai is the letter from Renyo Shonin. He was the 8th head priest of our school of Buddhism, what we now call Honganji Temple in Jodo Shinshu. And I'd like to talk a little bit more about the basics of our tradition today, because this letter very briefly summarizes some important aspects of what it means to be a Jodo Shinshu Buddhist. I'd like to break down the letter and talk about its contents and what I hope is a systematic and helpful way for all of us. The first sentence says, what is taught in the tradition of Shinran Shonin is that the entrusting heart is essential. Our tradition of Buddhism is called Jodo Shinshu, and our founder lived in Japan and put together a lot of his own unique perspectives on Buddhism at the time. Throughout history, many Buddhisms advocated for various forms of practice. One of the most common ones we see is meditation and mindfulness today. These days, they've been secularized and are often presented outside the framework of Buddhism. In Shinran's day and living long ago in Japan, there was no concept of quote-unquote religion as we know it today. Buddhism and native Japanese religion that we generally call Shintoism were just the lives that everyone lived. There was also intense classism in Shinran's time. So really, only wealthy people could properly practice Buddhism. Several groups of monks at the time realized that this was a problem, that everyone should be able to effectively practice Buddhism to achieve liberation from their suffering. Shinran and his group of Buddhist friends, in particular, emphasized Buddhist teachings on seeing our own imperfections and relying on or entrusting on the Buddha called Amida to liberate us from our suffering. That's where the emphasis on the entrusting heart in this sentence comes from. In Japanese, this term is called shinjin, with the two characters, trust or faith and heart or mind. The second sentence says, for when we abandon various practices and take refuge in Amida Buddha, with singleness of heart, our birth in the Pure Land is settled by the Buddha through the inconceivable vow power. Here, Renyo is encouraging folks to walk the path of Buddhism in order to be liberated from our suffering. The source of our liberation lies in fundamentally understanding our limited capacities as humans for being compassionate, both to ourselves and to others. While that might sound a bit hopeless, Renyo and Shinran are trying to tell us that our world is full of wisdom and compassion that we can't easily perceive with our human eyes. Coming to this realization, maybe feeling a bit stuck or hopeless, and then experiencing that compassion is what Renyo was talking about here. The vow or the wish of Amida Buddha to liberate all beings from our suffering. All beings means that everyone, whether you're clever or simple, whether you're poor or wealthy, it doesn't matter about your education, your gender, your sexuality, or your race. Amida Buddha made a promise to liberate all of us from our suffering if we can rely on that promise. The third sentence says, the state we thus attain is described as, with awakening a single thought of entrusting, we join those who are in this stage of the truly settled. To me, this is a really, really, really important part of our teachings, because I think a lot of us want instant gratification when it comes to liberation from our suffering, or happiness, or joy, or just having an easy day. We want the cause of our suffering to be eliminated right now, but it's actually a very slow and gradual process. We can and will get there, but it takes time. That's what the primal vow tells us. Here, in a sense, with the entrusting heart happening inside of us, when it awakens in our being, when we know that Amida Buddha has promised to liberate all of us, when that realization hits us truly and deeply, that's when we experience this notion of being grasped by the Buddha. This doesn't mean that we don't feel angry or sad or hurt or sometimes seek revenge, but from time to time, we remember Buddha's boundless compassion that takes us in and welcomes us home. That's a settling thought. The final sentence summarizes what can seem a very complicated notion of practice. Practice is very important in all schools of Buddhism because it's how we get from point A to point B, with point A being who we are right now, or who we were yesterday, or all of the pain and hardship and trouble that we make for ourselves and others, and point B being liberation, nirvana, the cessation of suffering. It's like talking about our practice is like talking about or describing a mode of transport, like a bicycle, a skateboard, a boat, a car, or a plane. For some Buddhists, we practice meditation, chanting, giving to others, mindfulness, and many other things. Some Buddhists do a little bit of all of these, or some of them focus on one or two of them. In Jodo Shinshu, our practice is done by Amida Buddha. That sounds pretty lazy, maybe, but I think part of our practice as human beings is realizing that, and that's not so easy. Amida Buddha is constantly working to awaken us all in our everyday lives. This is the working of Amida's immeasurable wisdom and compassion, or the primal vow. Our practice then is to say thank you. This is when we say Namo Amida Butsu together today. In a sense, our practice is building our communities together to share these teachings so that we can all say thank you. 本当にありがとうございました、皆様. I'd like to close today's Dharma talk by reading the English translation of the Tradition of Shinran Shonin once more. Following the reading of the English translation, I'd like to read the letter by Rinyo Shonin in a traditional way. Shonin Ichiryu Sho no Gobunsho. Please join me in Gassho. What is taught in the tradition of Shinran Shonin is that the entrusting heart is essential. For when we abandon various practices and take refuge in Amida Buddha with singleness of heart, our birth in the Pure Land is settled by the Buddha through the inconceivable vow power. The state we thus attain is described as, with awakening a single thought of entrusting, we join those who are in the stage of truly settled. Recitation of the name of the Buddha, Namo Amida Butsu, therefore should be understood to be the Nembutsu of an expression of gratitude for the Tathagata's benevolence for settling our birth in the Pure Land, humbly and respectfully. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namandab, Namandab, Namandab. I'll now read the Gobunsho for Shonin Ichiryu-sho. Shonin Ichiryu no go kanke no omomuki wa shinjin no motte honto serare soro. Sono yue wa moro moro no zogyo o nagesete isshin ni mida ni kimyo sureba 不可思議の眼力として仏の偏り養生味上せしめたもそのくらいを一年発起入少女四十とも釈しその上の称名念仏陀如来我が往生定め玉井しご恩法人の念仏と心べきなりあなかしこあなかしこNamanda, Namanda, 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 Namanda. Thanks for coming to this morning's service. I will end our recording and we can hang out and chat for a little bit.